Everyone, and welcome to this convening competitions online workshop slash lecture, whatever you want to call it. My name is Laura. I'm the president of the Danish Debate Association. I am also the president of the Copenhagen Debating Society, and I'm one of the conveners for Copenhagen EUDC. And I'm hosting this workshop as part of the Irish Training Academy, which is also affiliated with the official EUDC 2025 training workshops. So yeah, welcome. Why will it not change slides? There we go. Great. All right, so my background for hosting this particularly about convening. Firstly, I'm incredibly passionate about convening and doing it the right way, avoiding some of the common pitfalls and just making competitions a more enjoyable experience for everyone. So that's my value statement for this. But on a more practical level, my background is that I've hosted 3 of the Copenhagen minis. I've hosted Nordic Schools Debating Championships twice. I've hosted 1 Copenhagen Open. And in 2025, we'll also be hosting Copenhagen Open, NSCC, and EUDC. So lots of convening, and beyond all of this, I regularly attend a ton of competitions. I've gone to over 20 competitions last year, so I do think that I'm very equipped at looking at what goes well and what might go less well at some competitions from a convening and organizing perspective. Now, this workshop caters to anyone who has any sort of interest in doing these things. I think there are a lot of different levels of institutional knowledge locked into some institutions and some regions, whereas some other regions might be less developed in regards to hosting regular competitions. And for those regions or societies, this might be particularly useful. But I think there are tips along the way that anyone from any skill level should be able to tap into and get something out of. So let's get started. All right. Cool. Firstly, let's look at planning competitions. So I've divided this up in the planning part and the execution part. The planning part is going to take point of departure in 5 things, or look at 5 things: the timeline, the budget, internal management, external management, and marketing. So looking first at the timeline. Yeah. I think for the timeline, this is really nice to do as a first thing. It's nice for you to understand when you would like to have made certain kind of decisions and at what point you need to be locking in specific contracts or having final numbers for things, whether this is the venue or an accommodation, which usually are some of the first things you would like to do, or it's teams, internal, external, how do you do reg, it's food, it's your budget, your social activities, it's transport, marketing, info packs, and all the small things and details you might be missing along the way. So having this kind of timeline from the beginning really helps you organize your work, but it also helps you be aware of how much time actually goes into planning a successful competition, especially if it's your first time running it or the first time in a few years or seasons that your society has done a competition. Having a long enough timeline to do these things is the first and most important step. Secondarily, then, let's take a look at the budget. And I think this is where a lot of people usually have questions for me. I'm often approached by smaller societies that they'd like to get to know, how do we budget for these things? What kind of numbers should they expect? So the first tip here is you can actually start with other people's budget. Take a look at it and see what works and what doesn't work. Maybe you don't have access to specifically a budget for a BP competition. You can always try to ask friends if they would be willing to share some parts of the budget, if not the whole budget. You can also look towards similar events, maybe hosted at your university that have public budgets, or other societies that would be willing to share, to see if they have anything that you can copy and paste in terms of cost of vendors, cost of certain expenditures, etc., etc. Last thing you can do in order to get inspiration is that you can look at public budgets from, for instance, Worlds or EUDC. These are probably not very one-to-one applicable, but what you can do is go through the expenditure budget posts and see which line do they have. So that is to say, they have IAs, they have food, they have photographers, they have tab. All of these things can work as a checklist and a way to get inspiration for what items need to be included in your budget. Secondarily, when you're making your own, then you want to be very realistic and you want to be exhaustive. That is to say, you don't want to just have a budget process as fixed costs and variable costs. You want this to be broken down as much as you can. I would also break food cost into the different meals. I might even separate it into different vendors if I have different vendors. And so in that sense, you want to be very exhaustive. But the really important thing is also to be incredibly realistic. You don't want to set a reg fee that is too low just because you want that, more people to come, but then you end up with a deficit that is going to harm your society in the long run. So be realistic and exhaustive, get a lot of different offers from different vendors so you can do this the best way possible. Now, thirdly, I would recommend looking at budgets as part of communication. So for some people, the budget that they're making for their competition is just really an internal measure for them to keep check on if they're the sole convener or maybe in a group of two. But regardless, just continue to think of it as communication. You need it to be understandable also to other people. So make it look nice, make it efficient, make sure that your calculations are easily understandable so you can share them with your team for good measure, with your board for good measure, and with your future self, because sometimes you forget things that you thought you had written really clearly, and then you don't understand it the next time you look at it. So just be very mindful of communicating through this Excel, through these numbers. I'd also recommend looking, and I think point 4 and 5 go together here, knowing which parts of your budget are the most fragile, vulnerable, or volatile budget posts is really important to understanding where it is that you have more leeway or where it is you have less leeway within that budget. So for instance, for us, it's typically food can be a very volatile budget post pre-reg because you don't necessarily know how many people might need certain dietary requirements that cannot be met within our regular caterer, for instance. But it could also be that you have a CA team that haven't booked their flights yet. And to that extent, CA transport might be a really volatile budget post if they don't book it soon, because flight prices go up and down all the time. So knowing which of these budget posts are the most critical can help you plan accordingly and make sure that they are the most realistic numbers as well. Fifthly and finally then, as I said, ties together with the other thing, be aware of how much money do you have extra. That is both within the budget, but also if everything goes wrong, is your society able to meet a buffer of 1,000 euros? Or would that bankrupt everyone personally in the society? It's good to know where these kind of lines lie and what kind of wiggle room you might have in case something goes very wrong. Then let's break this down a little further, because I think revenues are quite simple in this sense. You probably get revenues from reg fees, great. If you get it from anywhere else, such as sponsors or foundations, pools of money you can apply to and you can spend, that's wonderful as well. But primarily your reg fee would then be comprised of a variable one, or your revenue would be comprised of the variable ones depending on reg fee, and your fixed ones depending on external sponsors or anything like this. This should be an easy thing to break down for you. The costs are a little bit more complicated, so I've divided these into fixed costs and variable costs. On fixed costs for a regular tournament budget, I would have the venue. For a lot of us, venues can be found for free or at least for very cheap through negotiations or agreements with your universities or other schools in the neighborhood. So that's wonderful. The second fixed cost for us is the external teams. So that is CA teams, equity teams, and tab teams. While you might want to have some of these people internal, so internally promoting an equity officer or finding a tab director in your own community, the cost of these might be lower. We should still account for these costs to see if you still need to budget for them to get to the actual venue back and forth. Thirdly, and importantly, please don't forget to account for the tabbing cost within your budget. Lots of competitions forget this and then are surprised when they get the recommended price that they're supposed to be paying for this or the fixed price. I can't remember how they're doing it now. But just make sure that you're actually paying tab and that you're able to pay for tab. You need to be able to pay for tab. Fourthly, then, on trophies is also a fixed cost. You usually know how many trophies do you need. Do you just need it for grand finalists, or do you need it for everyone who make it to a final? Do you also need it for ESL finalists, top speakers, all of these things? Then maybe you'd like to have photos taken from a photographer. This is also something that can easily be done internally if you know someone who's good at taking photos, but I would not recommend skipping completely and not paying anything on this, because great photos are both great marketing material that's really valuable for you in the long run, also just really, really nice for participants to get to have wonderful pictures of themselves. And then the last point of our fixed cost is that we usually give a gift of appreciation to the CA team, to tab team, and to equity as a thank you for partaking in the competition. So these also go on our that part of the budget for us. Now, in terms of variable costs, I've put IAs here, which for some people might be a little bit not controversial, but some of them see it as more of a fixed cost than a variable cost. For us, IAs, a large pool of the money is a fixed pool of money that we know exactly that will only be allocated to IAs, almost independently of how many people reg. But a large pool of the IA money also comes from people missing judge fees. So if there's an N-1 and you don't meet the N-1 requirement, usually you impose a fee on those kind of institutions, and that money goes into the IA pool for us. But it could also be that IAs just vary greatly, and you might have some that are much closer and some that are much further away. So to that extent, we call it more of a variable cost because it is firstly harder to estimate, but secondarily, it also does depend on reg, and we are usually able to up reg and therefore up IAs. So to that extent, it is a cost that the individual pays and not the collective pays, if that makes sense. So yeah, it becomes a variable cost. If you want to put it on fixed, that's perfectly fine as well. We also have food on variable costs. So that is, the individual meals that each participant eats during the competition. As I recommended before, I would break this down into the very specific meals. So Saturday breakfast, Saturday lunch, Saturday dinner, and not just like Saturday food. Thirdly, we have snacks on this. And fourthly, we have miscellaneous, which I usually try to keep as small a budget post as possible, because if miscellaneous is too large, I think it means that you have not been able to break down miscellaneous far enough. So I would recommend breaking it into as many pieces as you can, whether or not this is paper or cleaning supplies for mishaps that might happen, whether it's specifically something for socials that you'll need. I would break it down as much as I can when I know my specific plan for the competition, so that I don't just have 2,000 euros allocated for miscellaneous without knowing what miscellaneous is supposed to be or going to be. It is great, though, to have some money that is unallocated in case of emergencies, and a little bit more on that later. So that was a cost breakdown. So let's look at how this takes us to a final reg fee. Firstly, your final reg fee should probably be relative to the market. So for us, that means taking a look at what other competitions are out there. Which ones do you think you compare most directly to? Do you have any specific value propositions on your competition that makes it reasonable or legitimate for you to have a higher reg fee? Or do you need to have a lower reg fee in order to attract more people to get there? So make sure that your reg fee reflects the market and the willingness of people on that market. If you are a new society, or if you are new at running competitions, it is very, very beneficial for you to undercut that market a little bit, go a little bit cheaper than your competitors, and attract more people. We had a reg fee of 25 euros per team for the first Copenhagen Open that I convened, which was extremely successful. We reached almost 20 rooms because we had such a low reg fee. So I highly recommend being able to do this. The profit might turn around in the end. So yeah, think about that. But secondarily, then, if we look at the function that I've tried to make for how you establish a reg fee. On the reg fee, you have the total fixed costs divided by the estimated amount of participants. Here you want to be very realistic. It's not beneficial for you to overshoot, and if you undershoot, you're likely going to end with too high of a reg fee. So the more realistic you can be, both in terms of your capacity, of course, but also in terms of your connectivity to the rest of the community, how many people are you feasibly going to be able to attract, is very helpful to think of this. But yeah, back to the function. So you have the total fixed cost divided by the estimate amount of participants. You then add the variable cost for one person, and then you add a premium. So the premium is what you add in order to make sure that you are able to have a small contingency, firstly. Secondarily, then your premium should probably also cover if you're, for instance, subsidizing local competitors. So when we host our Nordic Schools Debating Championships, the Danish judges, they don't pay a reg fee, and then they also eat for free. So this is how we incentivize Danish judges to attend that competition, which is both really important for us, but also very valuable for the competition itself and the participants there. So that means we need the reg fee from the other participants to cover that extra small cost of feeding the Danish judges, so to say. So this is part of the premium. I do think that there's a general belief that a lot of societies add an extreme premium to make an extreme profit. I hope and believe that this is not necessarily true. It's definitely not true from our perspective. So I would say be reasonable with your premium and make sure that it still reflects the general market. So if you add, for instance, 5 euros as a premium and say you want to profit 5 euros per team or per person that signs up, then great. That's probably very realistic, and it's probably a nice contingency. If you're adding 15 euros, maybe that's not as, sustainable or socially acceptable, so to say. Be mindful of your reg fee, because we, I guess, still want debating to be an as inclusive sport as we possibly can make it. And secondarily here, you'll notice that I've separated prices just for general reg fee and prices for accommodation. That's because for us, the price of the accommodation is a one-to-one. So whatever it costs us to book your room, we round that up to euros, so it's a nice clean euros number, and that is the price that you pay for accommodation. This is not necessarily something that we make money on. We might make €1 per night that a person books a room with us, but ultimately this just translates into us having security that we're able to book all the rooms necessary. So I recommend separating these prices also because it makes it significantly more transparent for whoever wants to participate, and therefore it's easier for them to know if they want to book accommodation via your options or if they want to find something themselves. That's how you get to a reg fee. Great. Let's move away from budgets and money and instead look at people through internal management. So generally speaking, when you're doing these kind of things, you want to establish a team that is working together with you. You want to make sure that you have nice people that you can trust and who trust you and who are motivated. I think it's a Venn diagram of 3 that makes the ideal team. Firstly, who actually exists? Like, who are the options out there for you to work with within your society or then, close debating circles, whatever. Secondarily, who wants to work with you? Great overlap there, people that exist and people who want to work with you. And then lastly, look at specifically relative to competencies, differentiation in skill levels, having different areas that they can tap into, but maybe also different levels of expertise. Who are the people you need to be working on this in order to ensure a smoothly running competition where you are not too many people trying to pull in different directions, but you're also enough people to make sure that you can both cover all the organizational tasks and to make sure that you have enough representation of different opinions so that you're not forgetting anything important. That should ideally lead you to a great team. I've included the team that is organizing Euros, so the six people that are officially part of the organization team for Copenhagen EUDC, just so you can see a differentiation of what people are actually working towards here and a way that it might be nice to organize your team into different roles if you'd like to. But no, then for internal management, I just have 3 general recommendations here. You want to over-communicate as much as you possibly can. I think it's really great to keep people continuously updated, but also to update your internal team if nothing is happening. So to say, we don't have an update this week, we haven't had any more registrations, and we haven't moved closer to booking food or something. It's also nice to make sure that everyone stays involved and knows exactly what's happening. Secondarily, let the team expand a little bit as you go. So while you're setting up the team initially in the beginning, when you start to get closer to the competition, it's a really great opportunity to look to the people in your society and see if there's anyone who would be additional and great values additions to the team. Sorry. That means then that you can both get more experience to more people, but you can also make sure that your organization is as robust as possible when actually running the competition. So let it expand as you move along. And then lastly, it might be really helpful for you to also clearly separate key members, such as the people I showed you on the slide before, versus general extra support from, maybe this is from alumni or just older members, more senior members in your society who would definitely be able to help. They would be able to help you, set up trash cans if you need to, but they're probably not there they're probably not there mainly to set up trash cans, if that makes sense. And if anyone hasn't noticed, I am still ESL, so if I'm messing up as we go, just please ignore this. Let's move on to a separate point on people then, specifically about external management. So this is about all the people outside of your organization. Firstly, there's something about establishing teams that might be particularly difficult to people, and also one of the areas where I'm most often contacted because people are looking for suggestions on who they should approach and how they should approach them. What kind of constellation is a successful constellation? What you want to do is, well, let's just clarify which teams are you looking at. Probably CA teams, maybe you're including some deputy chief adjudicators or some, what's it called? The ones that are in training, the ACAs. But secondarily, you're probably also looking at a tab team. And thirdly, you're probably looking at an equity team. These are the most common kinds of teams that you're importing, hiring, whatever, from abroad. Great. So when you're establishing these teams, what you want to do firstly, and especially with the CAs, you want to be as early as you possibly can. As soon as you know the dates for your competition, I would recommend reaching out, and I would recommend being very active in asking them to give a specific reply as soon as possible. If you don't know them directly, so let's imagine that you have someone in the pipeline that you would really love to work with, but you're not friends on Facebook and you don't know each other very well. I would try to find a mutual connection and ask that mutual connection to link you up first so that you don't end up in a spam or separate DM folder that they're not going to be looking at. So try to help your own friend circle reach people and ask your network to help you reach the people you need. So be very early and figure out how to contact them, but also diversify this team. So you probably don't want 3 men from the same country to be your CA team of an international competition. You probably also don't want the opposite, like 3 women from the same country. So what you want to do is you want to try to find people who are representative of the people who are likely going to participating. So for instance, if you are located in, I'm located in Denmark, so it might be reasonable for me to find someone from near countries because those are probably going to be a lot of my competitors or participants. But it could also be really great for me to reach far about so that we have different representations from different people. So we usually try to be very diversified and have different kinds of people there, both because they help attract more participants, but it probably also just makes for a better CA team when there's a diversity of opinion on it. Secondarily, then, I would be very clear on expectations towards these people. That means you want to very clearly communicate when should they be buying their tickets. How are you going to make sure that that everything is sorted in time? What lines of communication are you using? How are you talking to each other on? All of these things are really nice to be very clear and upfront on, and having some sort of, if not rules, then at least values that you're trying to tell them about so that they can know how to expect to be working with you in the future. Thirdly, then, and I think this is really important and quite undervalued, I think you should match your team to your needs a little bit more. So I think the most common, if not mistake, then just hurdle that a lot of news or societies that don't organize a lot of competitions face is that they try to find the biggest name in debating to CA their competition the very first time that they're having a competition, or the first time that they're having a competition in like 5 years. This is maybe possible for you, and it's great to try, but I think there's also a lot of value in finding people who are really motivated to help your society or your community grow. This might be people who are regionally closer to you, but it could also be people who have fewer CA gigs, who are just generally really motivated towards building up a CV and want to become more of a part of the community. They don't have as many, CA gigs where they have to come up with a ton of motions, and they don't have as many favors that they have already pulled from their friends. So maybe these people are more motivated and have a lot of incentives to do really well. And for me, at least, I would always recommend people to have different levels of expertise and to not be afraid to reach out to people who don't CA competitions every weekend. One of the most successful competitions that I hosted was definitely one with the least experienced CA team. Not to say that experienced CAs are not also amazing, but just to say you don't always need world's CA to be on your team in order for your competition to be successful. So figure out what you need and then find someone who matches that for you. Cool. Second point on external management refers mainly to stakeholders here. So which are the external groups, individuals, whoever, who might have an interest for you? We tried mapping this out when we were doing the EUDC bid and when we're working towards EUDC. This can be really useful for you in order to figure out who do you need to email, who should you stay in contact with, who can help you make sure that things run nicely and successfully and just smoothly. So mapping this out and contacting these people can be very helpful for you. Cool. We're gonna move towards marketing now, which is another really fun aspect of hosting competitions. Obviously, they differ quite a lot across competitions, and here you can see how we've marketed EUDC, which this marketing campaign is not just my favorite thing to work on, but also has become like our little baby, and we're very excited about that. So marketing can definitely be a fun thing, and I think it works better when you see it as something that is exciting, different, fun, and not something you're doing to get money and to get people to show up. But it should be something where you're like actively contributing to something positive in the community as well. I think generally people respond quite well to that kind of way of doing marketing. Cool. So marketing for Copenhagen Open, for instance, looks quite different than it does for EUDC. As you can see here, we focus on the people more specifically because we're trying to use them, their networks, their names to attract more participants. I tried to remove all the transitions, but I guess it didn't work. Ignore that. Second way that we're promoting general competitions is through word of mouth, talking to our friends, texting people, being very active on telling them, show up, be at the competition. We also have a lot of posts, or at least we try to have a lot of posts on our regular page. These are usually, the aesthetic kinds of posts where you tell people something important and you hope that they respond well to it and show up. And then lastly, you might want to make a meme once in a while. I guess this works really well, and it ties back to the beginning of what I said. It is the marketing is just the best when it also gives something to people, even if it gives something to the people who are not going to participate. At least it spreads that awareness and that contribution to a positive environment that is fun to be in for everyone. Now, if you want to improve your marketing, a little tip that you can work on in groups or alone is try to highlight what are your 3 USPs. And this means unique selling points. So, what 3 things are different from your competitions relative to other competitions that means that people should show up to that competition? It's not enough to just say we have a good CA team and we have nice food or a good venue. Most competitions have a sufficient CA team, food, and venue. So, what are the things that you can do that are actually unique in order to make sure that people feel a need to go to your competition and not another competition that is running online or in another city the same weekend? Yeah, so highlighting these is very useful for you. Also helps inspire your memes. Now, let's move on to the point that is more specifically about running competitions. This is a shorter point, but I still think really relevant. I try to live under the motto of if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. And this is how I sort of incorporate this into the way that we run the competitions. Firstly, I create a detailed playbook with timestamps and people. So that means I have a task, I have a time firstly, I have a time, then I have a task, and then I have the people who need to fulfill that task. I do this for the entire competition from the evening before, timestamps running until after the closing ceremony 3 days or 2 days later. I print it out, I clip it together, I do that with the thing, and I give it to each organizational member who needs to have it. They run around with their own one, and we each check off when we've reached our points. We tear off the first page when the first day is done, and then we move on. So we each have a very detailed way of knowing what are we supposed to be doing, who's supposed to be doing what, and making sure that we're actually doing it. And simultaneously with this, we're obviously texting to each other all the time, talking, yelling, running back and forth, all of these things. But as detailed a playbook as possible will help you not forget who's supposed to be setting up, who's supposed to be doing A, B, C. Secondarily, then, I really recommend starting small. So if you have never hosted something before, or if you want to scale up your competitions, try hosting something where you're imposing the same kind of quality restrictions upon yourself, but you're not doing it to the same amount of size. That can really help you make sure that you know what you're good at and what you can improve on. And it also helps spread the word that you are, a good convener, a good organizational team that does things successfully. Thirdly, I'd recommend testing other competitions. So I think for very few societies is it possible to have a core convening team that doesn't regularly attend other competitions. It does happen, I'm very aware, but I think that's the exception to the rule. More generally speaking, I think relying on your own past experience from having attended competitions is going to help you figure out what it is that you like about comps, what things usually go wrong, what things annoy people, how do they respond to certain, actions, foods, environments, what matters, what do people complain about, and what do they really enjoy. Knowing these things, building your competition up relative to this, and drawing upon that experience is what made it possible for us to host the first Copenhagen Open in 5 years very successfully without having any experience in running a PP comp like that on a one-to-one scale. Fourthly, then, is I think it's really great to think about the day for the participants from the moment they wake up to the moment they go to sleep. What are the steps that a participant in your competition takes? So this is where you want to step out of your frame of mind and you want to go into their shoes. They wake up at their accommodation. Where do they have breakfast? How do they get there? How do they check in? I have a full checklist of this in just a little bit, but thinking about it from their perspective is really going to help you make sure that their day is planned in a way that is successful and efficient and functional. Fifthly, and I think this ties neatly into that, is that you want to think about what are the ways in which you can be as inclusive and take inclusive measures for everyone. Standard equity procedures in terms of accessibility, in terms of recognizing different needs, or in terms of having a great equity team that's also really helpful in terms of making the most of the physical venue, for instance, can be very great tools to do this. It can also be things such as highlighting where there are gender-neutral bathrooms, and all of these other steps that you want to take to ensure inclusion in a way that's not just inclusive for you, but is inclusive for all the participants at your competition. Sixth, and this is something that I think a lot of conveners skip out on. Don't do it. Don't skip out on it. Info packs are just really wonderful, and they're such a stress reliever for anyone who's traveling to a country that they haven't been to before. It's also a huge stress reliever if you're bringing a lot of new people to a debate competition and they haven't gone a lot before. Those people really like to have something to latch onto and to get recommendations for what they should do, how they should arrive in the airport, if the water is drinkable, what kind of currency, all of these things that we could easily Google, but it's just very, very nice when people tell us. I think tying into this, if you can have a few recommendations of where people should get dinner, where they can find cheap beer or a local, snack that's really interesting. These are things that just make it feel more personal and helps them have an experience that is more unique and less about debating, but more about the entire experience. I think this is something that's really great. And I want to really stress something here. We tend to organize competitions with the winning teams in mind. We think about the people who break, the most important ones, making it very competitive, making it really like high quality. Yes, let's do all of those things. But let's also remember that the majority of the participants are not breaking teams and they're not breaking judges. That means you just have a lot of people who just showed up, debated 5 rounds, and now have more time either to watch debates, hang out, or travel, and you want to make that easy and fun for them. This is the majority of your income. It's also the people who are like the future of debating. You should invest into them and you should make sure that their experience is really nice. That's very important for me. Having said all of these things about planning and how this translates to execution, things do go wrong. I have an example here, which is from Copenhagen Open 2024, where we had catering, they had delivered the food, and then they had closed down the cafeteria because we were the last delivery of the day. We had ordered food for 220 people. I think they had given us 40 forks in total, probably. A few of us had already run across the street. We were setting up for the social, and then we get the call that we're missing around 180 forks. Very great, very wonderful, just what you want. So it's exactly those kind of small things that firstly, you're not able to predict that are going to happen, especially for external relationships. You cannot ensure preemptively that all of them are going to meet every single requirement each and every time. So what you want to do here is a few things. Firstly, you want to have very clear and calm communication. Secondarily, wait, do I not have this on the next slide? I think so. Yeah, let's talk about this then in this way. You want to have very clear communication. The ways to avoid some of these things is to avoid miscommunication. So when the person calls up and they says, we're missing forks, you don't want to take that personal. You don't want to stress. You want to breathe, calm down, and think about how you can solve it. So looking at point 3, having some sort of these contingencies planned out, most importantly for us, apparently, have cash at hand so that it's easy to send someone with cash to buy extra forks at the grocery store and bring that back is a really important and easy way to have a clear contingency. Having cash at hand, having communication open, phones on sound, and never being angry. So if people tell you need to fix something, you say, great, I will, or you say, are you sure? But you don't get angry at a suggestion that you need to fix something, because in a stressful situation, you need to remove those emotions in order to act efficiently. The second thing, having done 1 and 3, is just the common mistake here is that scheduling is off. Things just take a long time. Even if I think I can run a competition where you have an hour for the debate, 15 minutes to prep, 15 for OA, so that means an hour and a half per round, it doesn't work and it's impossible due to the many different moving parts, the human errors, the ballots that might not print, or the one IA who takes a long time to do DLib and OA, all of these things. So make sure your schedule has a lot of room. These were the 3 common mistakes that people make and also how we solved the fork situation. Right. Next point then. We've reached the point of the checklist. So I have 3 slides now just on a checklist. I think the checklist is exhaustive. If you can think of anything that I haven't thought of, please let me know. I would be curious to hear this. So it goes on a question based. So how do people get from the airport to their accommodation? Great. They're at the accommodation. Where? Who do they sleep with? In the same room, not in the same bed. How much does it cost them? How much does it cost you? How do you organize with the accommodation vendor, etc.? On arrival night, what should they do? Where should they go? Is there any socials happening? The day after, where do they eat breakfast? What do they have for breakfast? You are setting up the venue probably. How do you do this? How many people do you need? Where do you set up check-ins? Are the room organized relative to a debate format? Where are your volunteers? What time are they meeting? Who are they? Are they informed beforehand, or do you need to do a meeting on the day off? What happens? Moving on. You probably have an opening ceremony, some sort of announcements. Who says what? What did they say? What is really important to be said, and what are more like great to do if we have time to cover it? Now you're running the rounds. Who is needed? What is needed? Where do you need these people to be? Who's collecting ballots? How fast can they do it? Do you have paper ballots or do you have online ballots? Who's submitting ballots? Have you communicated with TAB clearly already? For lunch, what are they eating? Where are they eating? Who have supplied them with the lunch? Do you have any snack breaks? And are these snack breaks where you're supplying snack breaks? Or is this a break where they can go out and buy snacks themselves? Similar for dinner, what do they eat? Where do they eat it? Who supplies it? And then if you have any disabilities, emergencies, or health issues, who do you reach out to? And is it clearly distinguished between reaching out from, a 911 situation versus an equity situation versus someone who just generally feels bad? Who are the different kinds of people you need to be contacting, and is everyone informed about this? Secondarily, on socials in the evenings, where do they happen? What is going to happen at the socials? When do they happen? And do you need any extra people to make sure the socials work? Is transportation safe in the evening? Can they easily get on and off like public transport? Are they informed about how to buy tickets? Is it safe? Do they run all night? And then the next day, you probably want to know what time you actually do cutoffs. And this might be different than the time you tell them you do cutoffs. But when do you do it? Are you going to be streaming out rounds? And if you're having a finals venue that is different than like the main auditorium, where are you having it? Do people know how to get there? Yeah. These are the general questions for this part. And then, I had a few more things here. I guess something about closing ceremony, which I think we already covered. I think the other one was more like break ceremony. But let's do closing ceremonies then. Trophies, etc. Who says what? Who do you thank? Make sure you don't forget anyone. Pictures throughout the competition. What happens there? Is there a closing social, which is probably going to be for a smaller amount of people, but still really important for the people who are still in your city? After the competition, you might want to collect feedback from participants. How do you do this? How do you incentivize them to do it? What kind of questions are really important for you? Pro tip here, make it as short as possible and make sure that you remember everyone hates one thing, everyone loves one thing. Some people might love the food, some people might hate the food. Be realistic when you read be mindful when you read the feedback. But also for internal feedback, which is probably even more important. How did your team feel? How did it work? Was anyone really exhausted or overworked? Was anyone underworked? And lastly, do you have to make any final reports from requirements from elsewhere? Do you have to make a final report to your board? Do you have to make any financial statements or qualitative reasonings behind decision making, things that went well, things that didn't go well? Collect these things, make it nice. I think it's a really good way to also hand over to future conveners. A few final notes from me because I'm almost done and I have been talking/yapping for a long time now. I think it's really, really, really important and undervalued to be a kind convener. Firstly, it's so much more fun for you if you get to walk around with a smile rather than yelling at everyone all the time. But really important as well, think about all the novices who is going to be at your competition. All the people who've never attended a competition before. You are probably their first connection to the international debating community. You're the first person that they meet that isn't like their own president who's now on a stage and telling them what's going to be happening. I think it's really sad when that kind of announcement starts with a collective, shut up everyone, fill in your feedback, let's do this, let's do that, in angry tones, unrespectful tones, as if we were talking to children all the time. And as if we were talking to children who are not behaving, more importantly. I have experienced many different kinds of conveners. The ones we like the most, the competitions that we return to, are the ones where people feel comfortable and where I want to bring my novices and I feel proud to show off the community. I feel happy to show off the community, and the community isn't as scary and angry words and yelling and swearing from the first get-go. This could be a personal opinion. Some people really like to be up on stages and yelling. I just think it's much more fun to be, a happy convener who's just really happy to see everyone. And from an efficiency point of view, I think the second one is probably even better than the first one. On a separate note on this, in regards to how we're making a sustainable kind of competition socially, I think we can also take a step back and really look at, is there any kind of measures that we can do to make a more environmentally sustainable competition? We're not participating in the most eco-friendly kind of activities, given how much we travel back and forth. But there are definitely things that we could be doing from an individual organizational perspective in order to combat some of the negative influences we have on our externalities. Whether this is just supporting less printing, whether it is, asking people or allowing or encouraging digital note taking rather than, wasting papers, whether it's not having meat in your food options. I think there are definitely ways that we can do good things. Could also be encouraging regional IAs that can take trains instead of flying, or having bigger IA budgets for people who take green transport. These are really, really great things, and it's also good ways to get external people to sponsor you because a lot of foundations really want more environmentally sustainable events, and this is a great way for us to do that. So let's be both mindful about how it is that we engage with general participants in terms of having a nice and comforting atmosphere, but also how it is that we approach the environment as a whole when we're organizing large-scale events that affect, hundreds of people and not just ourselves. We are, after all, making decisions on behalf of the community and on behalf of the participants who show up. So in that regard, let's make sustainable decisions, or at least try to think about it as much as we can. If you want to improve efficiency, I think the biggest tip I have for you is think about what is likely to go wrong, either during planning processes or on the day off, and then try to find solutions for this. If you have a lot of things that could go wrong, you can prioritize them, or you can also spar with other people. So reach out to friends in the community internationally, other people who have successfully hosted competitions, and maybe ask them for advice about how to overcome specific issues if you cannot think about solutions yourself. This is, the exercise related to this part of the workshop. That was the final thing I wanted to say. I hope I see you at Copenhagen Open. I hope I see you at Copenhagen EUDC. I hope my ESL ramble hasn't been too difficult to listen to, and I hope you've made it this far. If you want to reach out to me, I'm always available to chat about convening and organizing. Really love these aspects of debate. This is my email, or my email is on the screen, but I'm more reachable through Messenger. It was great to I didn't see you, but I had a lot of fun doing this, and yeah, hopefully you did too. Thank you for listening so far, and how do I stop the recording? Great. Bye, everyone.